you remember before you had kids and you would go to exercise or work out? You could pretty much do it at any point of the day.
Yeah.
Want to work out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah, or after
You
work.
can.
Yep.
After work?
Sure.
You can. You want to do it at 9 in the morning? You can. Having kids changes
Enter kids.
that. Greatest thing in the world, but it usually means, I know that if I'm working out, I rarely work out in the daylight.
That's the truth.
It's usually either very early in the morning or later at night. And I like doing it in the morning because you get it over with.
Well, it's a great way to
feel
start
better.
your day, yeah. Check something off that list of accomplishments for the day.
One of the challenges, aside from just getting out of bed and getting up, is that it's often dark. And, going out running in the darkness, it's kind of an interesting thing. But
Which in the summer is, not bad.
Yeah.
Dark and cold in the winter is just even worse.
It is.
Because it's also dark.
Because it's freezing.
Well, yes.
It's freezing. You have to
Yes.
layer up, and you go outside, and that cold air hits you. But let's use that as an example of where
Does
we're
your
going
beard
with this.
freeze?
The beard itself doesn't freeze, but if it's snowing, yes, the snow will stick onto it. I mean, I've come home with icicles on the face before.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes
All
me
right.
it makes me look really tough.
I bet it does.
So,
Yeah.
but let's use as an example, because in the winter, when it's dark out and you go outside and I go out to run, I'm not enjoying it. It's pitch black. It's freezing cold. It's miserable. But then even what happens in the winter is the sun comes up and you do get to see there is nothing like the sun coming up over the snow. It's silent. It's beautiful. It is. It's almost, maybe that's just what I tell myself is that's my reward for getting up, is getting to see the sun come up and getting to experience that peace and quiet. You're probably wondering where we're going with this, and that's fine.
Yeah, I am.
And you are too, Heath. All right, so here's where I'm going, is that on June 17th, it was a Friday, the Dow hit its lowest point of 2022. 29,000.
As it rests today.
As it rests
It's
today.
important that
As
we
of
know
right now.
we're not trying to call a bottom in the market. We're just giving
No.
you on Monday, August 15th, I think is the day.
That's today.
Where
Yes.
we are recording this. That is the lowest point that the market has seen so
right.
far this year.
So far this year, as of this recording, it was Friday, June 17th.
Yep.
What happened next? Let's dive into it. The market reopened Monday, June 21st. The Dow picked up 642 points. A couple days later, June 24th, 823-point gain. Let's skip ahead a couple of weeks to July 15th, where the Dow picked up 658 points. And then on the 19th, 755 points. July 27th, 436 points. Now let's move into August. August 3rd, 416 points. August 10th, 535 points. And this past Friday, August 11th, 425 points. That's 8 days. In those 8 days, the Dow picked up 4,690 points. Now, there were days where the markets were down within that period of time. It didn't go straight up. But if you stayed invested, you participated in the recovery.
You are participating still
If
in
you
the recovery, if you stayed invested, right?
were willing to stay through that darkness, you got to see the sun start to come up.
And one of the biggest things that we talk about is no one knows when the bottom of the market is.
No.
We don't know if
And we don't know if we hit it.
if June 17th was it. We could go right back down there and maybe test even lower at some point in the next couple of weeks, months, who knows. But what we do know is that when the market hits its bottom, and you never know for months past that,
Right.
that you have to participate in those up days. Because if you missed those 8 days of almost 5,000 points, that's the difference between making your money back over time and not.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned it's darkest before the sun starts to come up. And when everything is doom and gloom, in order for things to keep going down after they've gone down a decent amount, you have to keep getting bad news.
Right.
And if that bad news starts to slow, or you start to get clarity on some of the open-ended issues that the market has uncertainty on, that's when you start to see the stabilization.
Right. And I think the difference between getting to see the sun come up and the stock market is that when the sun starts to come up, you know the day is starting.
Yeah.
It doesn't go back down. It can get cloudy, it can
Yeah,
rain, but
sure.
it doesn't go back down and get dark again until the day is completed. in this case, we don't know. We talked about it last week. Are we in a recession, and how we won't really know until after we've been in one.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the stock market or the economy has recovered until after it's happened.
Right.
And so those 8 days we just talked about, we don't know that is a bottom was hit and we're on our way to a recovery, and we're going to go on to set new highs at some point here in the near future.
Right.
That will happen at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know that this is it. But what we do know is that we can look back and just say, hey, in the past month and a half, or almost 2 months now, there were 8 days of significant returns.
Yep.
And if you had missed those, we've talked about fear and anxiety, but wanting to avoid regret. Well, if you miss those, now we have regret.
Right. Because if you miss just those days, you're not making your money back.
No. Are we back to where we started? No, we're not.
No. And we still have room to go.
Right.
But to your point of that, at some point we will see a full recovery, and we will see accounts go back to hit new highs, and the markets as well. But in order to get there, you have to stay invested.
I know I gave you a script here, but I'm going to go down a little further because I think this is a good point to talk about it. On June 17th, what do you think the thought process was? Or if you had started to poll clients or just anyone about where's the stock market going, what do you think the answer would have been on June 17th?
It's going further down.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be polling clients. You can
Anyone.
poll.
Turn on CNBC.
Anyone. Yeah.
Right,
Look
anywhere.
at, read research reports. Everyone says we're in a recession at that point. Markets are going to keep going down. There's no good news out there. But when you see that amount of pessimism everywhere, it can sometimes indicate, and this is, George Comboy, the chairman of our firm, always talks about, when you see that level of pessimism, it can often indicate that the bottom of the market may be closer than we really think.
Right.
Because, as I had mentioned, in order for the markets to keep going down, you have to keep getting bad news.
Right.
Because the markets are always forward-looking. The fact that we had bad news a week ago isn't going to impact what the markets are going to do today. It's what's happening tomorrow and what's happening next week, what's happening next month. That is what makes the markets move today. It's never what happened yesterday and what happened last month.
And that, to me, is something that I think a lot of folks don't understand. And
right.
I will give people a pass for that because
of course.
You may not have the experience with it, or it's just you think, well, we just got this news, it's bad news.
Right.
Well, we may be thinking that's really bad news, the stock market is often taking that and digesting, what does that mean 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now?
Yep.
When the pandemic started in early 2020, there was so much uncertainty and the economy just kind of shut down over a weekend. The market's subsequent drop, which was really significant, almost 40% in a month and a half, was because there was so much uncertainty about the economy, about COVID and what that virus meant, but then it recovered fairly quickly, historically quickly, because we started to get some idea of how to live with the virus.
Yep.
And how we could move forward.
Well, the market's digestion of bad news doesn't typically take or isn't drawn out over a long period of time.
No.
The markets respond by thinking in a lot of ways, all right, what's the worst case scenario now? What's this really is bad news, and so we're going lower.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's, all right, well, how do we adjust and correct from there as we start to see what it actually means and what the ramifications truly are? And so in the pandemic, you see we have no idea what's going to happen. Market goes down 40% in 6 weeks. And then you start to see, well, stay-at-home stuff does well, and that recovers really fast. And then you have technology that everyone is, what was going to happen over the course of 3 to 5 years got forced to happen over the course of 3 to 5 months. And that's where money and where the assets flowed in the capital markets, away from the areas that didn't need it for that period of time. Mm-hmm. But the digestion process of bad news does not take months. For the markets, they are so efficient now. In some cases, it takes seconds, it takes minutes, it takes days.
Yeah.
And then markets will settle, or they'll see where, as more data comes out and more facts come out, and they'll start to respond accordingly.
In other words, you could compare the stock market to a toddler having a tantrum.
Sure.
In that, there is often when a child or a toddler does not get what they want or have something happen or falls off a bike, the initial reaction may be very strong.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Child falls
I was
off
wondering
a
where
bike.
you were going with
well,
it. But
I
yeah,
like to
think
keep it guessing.
it's a really good analogy. I like
Griffin,
it.
June, our younger daughter, is learning to ride her bike. She falls off. She gets very scared.
Yep.
She might get hurt a little bit. There
Sure.
might be some tears. The initial reaction is very strong.
Oh, yeah. My leg's broken.
As a parent, you can look at it and say, you fell off the bike. Maybe you scraped your knee. Let's put a Band-Aid on it. Put some Neosporin on it. Clean it off. We know they'll be okay. But there is a period where they're elevated, and then they start to calm down.
Yep.
And then eventually they get back on the bike. It's like a toddler when they don't get what they want. Sometimes they have a tantrum. They have to calm down from that, maybe take a time out, and then they can come back to normal. They can rejoin the group or re-enter the
Great
group and
analogy.
calm down. Stock market's not different. That initial reaction.
No, it's very strong. Good or bad in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And there are days where you look and say, okay, well, this past week there were inflation or job numbers, inflation numbers. Inflation's not gone. It didn't go back to where it was. It just didn't really rise. Doesn't mean everything's cheaper all of a sudden, but the markets picked up almost 1,000 points on that news.
Well, and again, they're looking at what does that mean for
Right.
next month's inflation data,
Right.
and 3 months from now, they're going to say, well, that's the fact that it slowed marginally,
Right.
is perhaps a positive sign for the future data that we will continue to receive, and they will respond in accordance with that.
Markets are forward-looking.
Always
We, as humans,
are backwards
tend
looking.
to look backwards.
Yeah.
We'll compare, well, where was I 6 months ago? Where did I start the year at? And where am I now? We are looking backwards because it's the easiest. That's where we have our information.
Yep.
We have data that we can look at and compare how are we doing, whereas markets are looking forward, we're looking backwards.
Right.
If we can become more comfortable with that idea. But if you have laid out a financial plan of where you want to be in 10 years or 15 years, that is forward-looking.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, that is the better data or better thing to consult. Well, how are we? Are we still on track? Yes. Okay. Then we're okay.
Mm-hmm. And the reality is, hopefully, no one drives only looking through the rearview mirror of their car.
Well,
you're
if
going to hit something. If you do, you'll glance back every once in a while, but your attention better be looking forward.
you have
on the
to look
road
back
that's
every
ahead.
now and again.
Yeah.
But you don't drive looking out the side window, which is where you are in that moment, and you don't look out only the back window, which is where you were. You look where you're going,
Right.
while staying aware
Yep.
of where you are and where you were.
Mm-hmm.
We just got to keep our eyes out the front of that windshield.
That's it. And sometimes we have to course correct.
Right.
But when you're looking for it, that's okay. Not looking for it, you're going to hit something.
And you got Griffin, a fine young gentleman. He's going to be learning to ride a bike soon.
Let me tell you something. The Band-Aid situation with Griffin is a heck of a task at home.
Yeah.
Has to
You
be
need
Sesame
to have
Street.
a certain Band-Aid.
Yeah. It has to be a certain
Yeah.
color.
Yeah.
Blue.
Blue,
Will
obviously.
not accept anything that's green.
Yeah. Yeah.
Picked out my tie today. He was very, very happy
Yeah.
to see that I had this tie on.
You ever interested, and I still do this as an adult, how I will make decisions based on colors. We dropped our kids off at Camp Stella Maris, and we were getting a slush puppy on the way out. And they said, what kind? I want blue. I don't know what flavor blue is. I wanted blue because blue is my favorite color, and I wanted blue. And, June got red, which was cherry. She wanted red.
I like June.
Even
Red's my favorite
I do
color.
too. June, Charlotte, Griffin, Cooper, they're great kids. We
Right.
love them. But I still, as an adult, pick things out based on color. I want the blue kind.
I'll tell you, I would probably be partial to a blue slushie. Remember at Notre Dame when they had you could get slushies for lunch?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't your lunch, but you could get like a little kind of mini
I do.
slushie after lunch. That was great.
I do. The statute of
mix the colors.
limitations has now passed, so I can admit this. What we would do is that we often, there were some very sweet ladies who might have been a little, their sight wasn't great. And so, a quarter with a couple of batting cage tokens below it could count as 75 cents. So, got my slushies. Usually it cost me 25 cents and then some old batting cage tokens I was able to scrounge up. So,
You are something else.
yeah.
When I transferred to Batavia, I missed the slushies at lunch.
Yeah. Good slushies. And,
They were. They were.
I got them for 25 cents and
They were always on sale for you,
a couple
apparently.
of Terry Hills batting tokens, batting cage tokens. So, Anyway, look, here's the thing. We don't know if the markets are on their way to a recovery, so to speak, from the bottom.
Yep.
But the point is, and we've preached this and we've harped on it, is that we don't know when the worst is over. We do know that if we panic and make decisions based on emotions and based on what's happening in that very moment, we can do real damage to our financial wellness and future. And our hope today was just to provide some perspective on what's happening and why that is so important to stay in the game.
Keep looking forward and look through the windshield.
Yeah, and if you're driving, please don't look back. Please don't drive looking out the side of the back. Nope. It's not going to work. Nope. It's not going to end well. Well, that's it. Hey, we'll be back next week. Thanks for stopping by and spending some time with us here on Wade into Wealth.